Hi friends, welcome to AMG World. Here I am with a mechanical topic which is related to IC engines. Here is our topic: how do a engine get started, right? And the equipments and the machines, the devices which involved in starting of engine. Let's get into the topic. Here is our topic: how do engine get started, right? We all know that in self motor assisted engines, just by operating the ignition key, engines get started, right? Here, how? But how? There are some machineries which accessorily added to the engine for getting the engine ready for start. So let's get into the construction. So if I take this one as an engine, here comes fan, engine fan, and here comes a wheel which called flywheel. This one is the engine. If I take this one as the engine here, if I take this one as a water cooled engine, I have a radiator here, right? Radiator. So here comes a gear like wheel mounted on this particular flywheel, right? A gear with a big structure, right? A big structure which is mounted on the wheel flywheel, which we call it as flywheel, is going to be mounted on the flywheel. So here comes a motor, right? A motor with a gear. Actually, we call it as a pinion. So pinion because it's smaller in size, and here let's draw the constructional details of self motor. This one is the casing of motor. Here is the shaft. On this particular shaft we have a smaller gear which called as pinion. Pinion, actually it's covered from one side. It's covered from one side. If we see from the front side, we can see the pinion. If we see the rear view, the complete section is closed, right? Here on this particular motor, we have a solenoid switch. It is it having two terminals, right, which getting electric power from battery when ignition key is operated. Here, after this, the connection is going to be extended to the motor terminals. If I take this one as a battery, right, here comes the ignition key. So ignition key. So this thing is connected to ignition key, and next to here, right? So when I operate the ignition key, when I just rotate the ignition key, what happens? The circuit gets completed. Here, the flow of electrons, right? Here, the battery, due to the potential difference, what happens? The electrons started to move. Here, electrons started to travel via the circuit, right? From here to self motor, and finally reaches to self motor. Here, observe one thing. Here, what is the purpose of solenoid? Why do we have solenoid and self motor? Actually, this particular gear is mounted in that way. It can rotate along with the shaft, and it also reciprocate, right? Here the solenoid having a plunger, and there is a particular construction which includes electromagnetic devices, right? Here comes the electromagnetic devices. The electricity first flows through the solenoid switch, and here it creates a magnetic flux, and here I have an electric, plunger, plunger. It attracts towards, this particular field. So iron is going to be attracted, right, by the magnet. So here magnetic flux is generated. So here what happens, this particular iron section is going to be travel towards this iron magnetic field, and we have connected a lever mechanism to this particular pinion shaft, so pinion gear. What happens, so if I see, if I draw this particular one, here it seems like this. So here this one is the fulcrum, and here this one is the iron block, and here comes the pinion gear. What happens, so here magnetic flux created, and due to this magnetic flux, what happens, the iron is traveling towards magnetic flux, which means the pinion pushes, so this plunger, so this connecting link pushes the plunger, pinion, in this direction, right, in the opposite direction. But this one also the same thing occurs here, same thing. So here what happens, when we operate the ignition key, the plunger operates the pinion, and at the time the pinion comes to contact with the ring gear, which is mounted on the flywheel, and later the supply is transfers towards these particular, terminals, which are connected to you know self starter, right. So so what happens, when the electrical energy reaches to this motor, self motor, what happens, the pinion starts to rotate, and pinion starts to rotate means it connected with the flywheel. What happens, it rotates the flywheel, and we have this flywheel connected on crankshaft. So here comes the engine cylinders, right. So when the piston, when the cylinder, when the flywheel rotates, what happens, the crankshaft also rotates, because the flywheel itself is mounted on the crankshaft. So when the crankshaft rotates, what happens, the piston makes oscillations, and with this, this is the crankshaft section, right. Here this crankshaft is directly connected via chain or via some timing gears towards, connected towards, a shaft called camshaft, which operates the valves, right. If we rotate the flywheel, what happens, we are directly operating the valves and camshaft, everything comes into motion within the engine. So what happens, so if I take here the third cylinder is ready to ignition, what happens, so here if the third cylinder is in the compression stroke, when the piston reaches to TDC, or when the piston is just reaching near to TDC, what happens, fuel is injected in CI engine or SI engine, spark is given, right. The third cylinder gets started. So next it pushes the piston down, right. The same thing here, if I take this one as a four cylinder engine, we will have firing order 1 4 2 3. So here, if the first cylinder gets expansion stroke for the first time, next the fourth stroke, the third stroke will get, the third stroke, here this one is the first one, this one third stroke gets the ignition stroke in the next sequence. So next we have, this one is the, so after third cylinder, fourth cylinder will get, ignition stroke, and next second cylinder gets the ignition stroke. Here the sequence of ignition 1 4 2 3, right, 1 4 2 3. This is the order of cylinder of the power strokes in the particular cylinders, right. At beginning we have a power stroke in first cylinder, next we have power stroke in fourth, and next we have second and third, right. Because for balancing the crankshaft, right, if we have seriously ignition stroke, what happens, it deflects the crankshaft, which we will go through next upcoming videos, right. So here is the power stroke order. So what happens, when the flywheel rotates, crankshaft rotates, and crankshaft rotating means piston also reciprocating in the cylinders, and it's operating valves also. So if I get third cylinder is ready to expansion, then what happens after the ignition in this particular cylinder? What happens? This particular cylinder gets started and it twists the crankshaft. Right here, by this engine gets started. When we just turn off the key, what happens? The solenoids. So here the magnetic flux is degenerated, which means the supply is going to be cut off. Right here, the magnetic supply is going to be dropped and come to zero side. So here, this particular iron block is mounted with a spring, which makes the iron block to go to its original position. So which results in this pinion to come back to its original position. By this, in this particular way, the engine is going to be started. So in two strokes, in bikes, we have a kick rod, right? So the same thing, we operating manually by keeping the kick rod, we are directly rotating the crankshaft, right? The process is same for two-stroke and four-stroke engines. So this is about engine, how it's getting started. So in the next upcoming videos, we will go through the next extension of these topics. So thank you for watching. Do subscribe to the world channel AMG World. Click on the bell icon to have updates. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to AMG World.